Okay, in this section, we're going to talk about how you go about fixing mistakes. So what I have here is a collection of 5 soprano tracks for a virtual choir piece of It Is Well. So I have already identified a few places where there are errors. So this is a little ways into the song, and there's kind of this, the piano stops, and there's this little space where the singers have to come in with the conductor. And we did send out a conductor track with this, but everybody came in at a different place. So let's just listen to that, and then we'll go about fixing it. Okay, so though and Satan are both crazy off. All right, so here we have, this is my vocal lead track, and I'm going to go ahead and place my cursor where the though should begin, and then I'm going to start listening and looking at each particular track to see who is off and where we need to move them. So I'm going to push this little headphones button. My all vocals is the lead track that has the matching track for all 4 parts. So I'm going to listen to that, and I'm just going to start at the top, and let's see how that sounds. Okay, that sounds great. So she's fine. Let's try the next one. Okay, that one's clearly off. So let's go ahead and fix soprano 2. Again, I'm going to line my cursor up to my lead track. So the though begins there. And then this is the track we're going to fix. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this track. I'm going to split this track. And you do that in the edit menu, split track at Playhead, or Command T. I use shortcuts a lot, so I sometimes forget where things actually are. But we're gonna split that track, and I'm going to move the track. I'm gonna split it in a couple of places. So first, I'm gonna split it before the though, and then I'm gonna look for a space where I can split it again, because we don't want to adjust her entire track without it knowing that it's wrong later. She probably gets back on at some point, so we don't want to screw that up. Now we've got kind of a long section here of a lot of notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check out on the lead track. I'm going to check out where Satan belongs. Nowhere, but where the word begins. Here we go. This is where Satan begins. And if you forget, then just hit the space bar to play it, and you can hear it. That's the ton. And here's the. So you want to find the exact right spot. And a lot of times the words are, they look like they're going to be where these little thin parts are in the WAV file, but they aren't necessarily. So you got to be sure to find it correctly. So I want the S. And it looks like my S begins right here. Okay, so here's where my S begins. So I want to check this soprano, and I can see pretty easily that this is where the S begins on her track. So we remember that she comes in too early on the though, and that the Satan part is too long. So I'm going to split the Satan part, and I'm going to split it with a Command T, and probably she went too long on the Satan, but we're going to fix this first part first and see where we are. So I've got this middle section here that is cut loose from the larger track. I'm going to grab it, and I'm just going to scoot it down to where Satan begins in the correct spot. Now, let's listen and see where we are. Okay, pretty good. So let's say we've got her fixed. Let's try the third one. Soprano 3. And I can tell by looking, she comes in too early. So let's listen. Okay, it doesn't sound that bad. So we're going to do something different for this timing error. You got to be sure to highlight the track that you want to do the cut on. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and split this track with my Command T. And then if you see this at the bottom of this editor part right here, I'm going to take this part of the track and I'm just going to take some of it off. And what that does is it mutes that part of the track so that she's going to come in at the appropriate time. So let's listen and see what that does. All right, great. That one worked. Now let's look at soprano 4. All right, it looks like she comes in early, so let's listen to it and see how it sounds. And I'm going to click on that track. Okay, it sounds like the Satan was okay. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with soprano 3. I'm going to split that track, and then I'm just going to have her mute a little bit so that it comes in at the appropriate time. Let's listen and see. Okay, good. That one worked. And then let's do one more. Okay. So this one looks okay, but let's see how it sounds. She's a little late. She's a little late. So I'm going to split. Let me listen again. I want to see where Satan lands. Okay, so Satan lands just fine. So if you look at this sound wave, we're going to be able to just move though. So I'm going to split it right here between though and Satan. And then I'm going to split it over here just before though. And I need to click on that, make sure that part of it is highlighted. Otherwise it won't do anything. Split that. Then I can just take the though. I'm basically just moving though and nothing else. And I'm going to move it to where it lines up with my lead track. So let's make sure that looks correct. I'm going to move it a little bit more. All right, now let's listen to it and see what happens. Okay, so she's off further down. But because we've got, she's got some space between, it's not all just smushed all together. And so we can kind of move every word to where we need it to be. So let me listen again. Okay, so she's off on the entire phrase. So I'm going to cut it here and just try moving the entire phrase over and see if that sort of helps us get where we need to be. Now, sometimes it's easier to move in this upper part than in the editor because looks like that's about where Satan lands. Because you can see it in relation to the other sound waves. So let's listen to that and see. Okay, great. So she's still off, but you've gotten the gist here. So we'll keep moving her until we get her on with everybody else. The other thing to pay attention to, and this little headphones thing is great for listening to individual parts, but now we're going to listen to the whole thing. And one thing I want to point out to you is this is my piano part. And this, nope, a little further down, this is where Satan should be because the piano hits a note there. So that's a good marker for me. I want to be sure that all my other parts are lining up with the piano. Now, I'm not going to include the piano in the soprano line that I end up creating. That's just the soprano track. But it's great to have it in when I'm mixing all of the sopranos, because it helps me make sure that I am staying in time with the music, that the timing works. All right, so let's listen to everybody. Okay, much better. And I'm going to take out the lead track. I'm going to mute it. That's what this little button is. The headphones means that's all you hear. The mute button means you won't hear it at all. Okay, so I just want to hear the sopranos with the piano, so I'm going to play that section. Okay, sounds pretty good. I'm not worrying about balance at this point. I'm just worrying about timing. I just want the timing to be correct. Okay, so what do you do if you have a wrong note? Okay, so I've already picked out a spot where 3 of my 5 sopranos are singing literally the wrong note. Now, this is a familiar song, and I find that when you have familiar songs, people sort of don't pay as much attention to the music, especially if they're in a section of the song where they're singing melody, because they think they know what the note is supposed to be. Okay, so I'm going to play this little section, and you will immediately hear that 3 of them are wrong. Okay, clearly, several of them are wrong. So I'm going to do just what I did before and identify who is singing incorrectly. I've got my lead vocals, my lead track on the solo section where it's all I hear, and then I'm going to start at the top. Are we singing the same note? Yes, we are. Great. Okay, let's try soprano 2. Nope, that's the wrong note. Okay, so I'm going to send this one down to the editor so that I can see it better. And it sounded like she got back on to the correct note on sin. So my was the only incorrect note. So let me make sure that that's correct. Okay, sounded a bit janky in there, but we're going to start there. So what I'm going to do here is very different. I'm not going to cut the track. One option would be just to cut out that note, but this one actually tends to work better and to create a better sound. What I'm going to do is go up to the menu, and I'm going to click on Mix. I'm going to click on Mix, and I'm going to click on Show Automation. What this is automatically going to do is give us the volume line that is, it's this yellow line, and whatever track I have highlighted, I'll be able to see that line in yellow. Okay, so this is my spot that is incorrect, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger just so I can see with a lot more clarity. So when I click on this volume line, it creates a little dot. And I'm going to create 4 dots. And then I just touch the line in between the 2 middle ones, and I bring the volume line down to the very bottom, and basically it mutes that section. So let's see what that sounds like now. Okay, so we got rid of the bad note. We had an easy ramp back in. There's not any, sometimes when you do a cut, it can create a pop. And when you do this volume thing, you can, you prevent that from happening. Okay, so let's check the next one. Okay, another same incorrect note. That was the predictable note if you know the song, but it's not what was written. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm making 4 little dots. I'm going to pull down that volume line so that she's basically muted for that song part. Okay. Let's see. Let's check this one. Okay, that one's correct. She's fine. So let's check this final one. This one I can tell is quite off timing wise. So you already know how to fix timing, so I'm not even going to listen to her. Okay, so I'm going to mute that soprano and let's listen to everybody and make sure we don't have a wrong note at that section. Great, everybody sounds correct. Okay, so now you know how to split the track to change timing, and you know how to drop the volume in order to get rid of a bad note or an out of tune note or something along that nature. Now, what if, and this always happens at the end of songs, you've got this big finale, right? Okay, so here's the lead track. Here is the lead track, and we're listening to the finale note. I'm going to add the piano back in there too. All right, so here is where our lead track ends. And the only soprano that makes it that long is this one. So we've got all of these other sopranos who peter out before the end. Now, that may not necessarily matter because visually we can see that they're all short, but it may not matter in the way that it sounds. But let's listen to it and see. So we're going to start kind of in the middle of that big last note. And I had the piano on solo. That was all we heard. So let's listen to everybody. It matters, but it doesn't matter for all the sopranos, okay? I've got a couple of really big voices here, so I want to be sure that those are the ones that don't drop out. So this top soprano here, soprano 1, I know that she's got a really big, and she's the one soprano who's hitting the really high note. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put my cursor in the middle of that long note, okay? Because they're not changing sounds, they're not changing syllables, they're not changing anything. They're just holding that note. I'm going to stick the cursor in the middle of her track, and I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to move this final section so that it ends in the right spot. Now, this is a neat trick. All of these tracks have memory of what came before them and what came after them. So when you split a track, if you, I'll do it down here, it's easier to see. If you grab the bottom half and it makes that little symbol of like arrows in both directions with a bracket, you can grab the bottom of that track and you can just send it, you can extend it. Okay, so let's listen now and see how it sounds when she goes all the way to the end. Much better. Now, I probably don't need to change. Maybe I'll change one other soprano and elongate that note. But one thing to pay attention to, and we'll see if it did it here. When you do something like that where a note carries through your break, it can create a pop. So let's see if it does. I've clicked on the headphones for soprano 1, so let's see if there's a pop there. Yep, there was a pop. I don't know if you could hear it, but when you get too many of those little pops, you really can hear it in the final mix. So this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna spread this out even more, and I'm gonna use my volume bar, which I still have up from showing the automation, and I'm going to create my little four dots where I can drop the volume, but I'm going to move it as close as possible to that break And then I'm going to move these as close as possible to the break so that hopefully there won't be a discernible audible silence. Let's listen and see if that worked, but it will take the pop out. So I'm going to move the cursor over here. Let's just see. Pop was gone. Okay, so this one uses both the cutting of the track and uses the volume bar. Okay, now there is a temptation for a lot of people to use pitch correction in Garageband. I do not recommend pitch correction. So what you do, I'll show you where it is because I don't want you to use it. Click on the track, click on the track up here so it's highlighted, and then on the bottom part next to the editor, it says track or region. Click on track. You can change pitch correction here, but what it does is it makes people sound like they're singing in a tin can. If somebody is so out of tune that they can't see, they sound bad with the rest of the group, adjust their volume or take them out. If they sing so consistently off pitch, delete the track. I know that sounds harsh, but delete the track. You cannot fix it and make it sound good if it's a pitch error, okay? You can't fix a wrong note with pitch correction, and I've just never found pitch correction to be actually valuable in doing what you sort of think it should do. So the only tools that I use to correct people's mistakes is I cut the track to adjust timing, I adjust or block out volume to correct or to obscure wrong notes, or I cut the track in the middle and elongate in order to have somebody hold a note long enough. Okay?